This hand of mine lives in water and has held hundreds of different kinds of fish. This hand of mine knows the shape of a shellfish like the back of my own hand. This hand of mine understands the language of tuna like no one can. Unless you belong to the fraternity of the incredible hands. It's 4 o'clock in the small hours of the morning. It's summer, but the weather has been unsettled recently, with showers scattered throughout the season. Masayoshi Takare is already up and about, while much of the rest of Tokyo is still asleep. He and his older brother run one of the stalls of the Tsukiji market, called Daizen. He specializes in the purchase of fresh wild tuna, while his brother is in charge of frozen tuna and sales to potential customers.
魚下漬けするときはやっぱ完全に感覚なんで、感覚と、経験と感覚がもの言うと思うんで。
The wild tuna auction will be starting any minute, and the outcome of his business today depends on what he is going to buy at the auction hall. This stall has been his family's business for 400 years. It is known as the longest-standing intermediate fish wholesaler in Tokyo, started by his forefathers way back in the 17th century. His father passed away just a few months ago in February, and the mantle of ownership now rests squarely on his and his brother's shoulders. Every morning, he makes his way to the auction hall, which is less than a 5-minute walk from his stall.
全体の品としてはまあ数はありますよね。定置とか結構上がってるんで。そうですね。あとは外国もんもスペインのマグロとか、あとはインドの乳児のインドとかね、あっち側のあるんで。
Prior to this job, Masayoshi worked at a consignee company. He has only managed to pick up a few tips on how to sell a good tuna from a bad tuna in the last 2 years. Understandably, Masayoshi is a little nervous and concerned because, compared to the other wholesalers, he has had far less experience. In fact, less than 10 years, having only started in 2002. A wrong call can cost him tens of thousands of dollars.
いや、高そうですね。正直。ただ今の魚だから微妙なんですよね。下手したら使えないってこともあるんで。今のは怖いですよ。変色とか多いんで。なんとも言えないですよ。
We were able to track back to a television program that featured Masayoshi and his brother when their father was still alive. Back then, it was an even more anxious Masayoshi who entered the auction hall. He was thrown into the world of bidding, even though he didn't feel ready for the job.
やっぱ最初のうちは もうしょっちゅう夢にも出てくるぐらい、そのぐらいやっぱり神経ピリピリ、まあ今でもそうなんですけどやってましたね。そうですね。手やり簡単に123456789、これで1から9なんですけど。
This is his father, the late Takare Sr., Kiyoshi Takare. When the program was made, he'd already been very ill since 1999. He had suffered from heart disease and had undergone 2 major surgeries. Mr. Kiyoshi never quite recovered from those 2 operations. Due to his illness, he was unable to attend to his stall, and nor could he teach his sons all the intricate details of the business by buying and selling tuna. In this line of work, it's not just about the business, but also about the skills transfer. From developing the right instincts at auction bids to using the right type of knife to cut up a 300-kilogram tuna, to understanding exactly what the customer wants. These are not skills that can be verbalized and taught immediately. A learner has to be guided through the processes, a luxury which the 2 Takare brothers didn't have.
僕が病気をしちゃったために、本当にもう子供に教えられなかった部分が随分あるわけですよ。そのことでもね、ちょっと僕は気になっちゃって、自分自身も自分が息子に言うのも変だけど、かわいそうだったなと思う点がいろいろ多々あるんでね。
Mr. Kiyoshi felt especially guilty because he knew that the family had a very impressive 400-year-old history, since the first Daizen was set up during the Edo period by the first Takare generation. Each Takare passed on the family's trade secrets to the next, and he himself had the benefit of learning from his own father, Zenjiro Kiyoshi. Mr. Zenjiro had an illustrious career at the Tsukiji market, and had a reputation for being able to evaluate every aspect of tuna in an instant. Making a good bid for the best tuna in the auction house was not difficult for him. The many years of experience he had almost guaranteed that his hunches were never wrong. His son, Mr. Kiyoshi, joined his father at the fish market straight after he graduated in English from university. Under the mentorship of his father, he was able to pick up the ropes of the family business and to keep it going. He worked with his father side by side, learning the secrets of the trade. For the soft-spoken Kiyoshi, it wasn't easy at all.
最初来た時僕は声がちっちゃいわけですよね。人に言っても聞こえないんですよ。また人の話が聞こえないんですよ。で聞き返すとね、バカ野郎って怒鳴られるんですよね。そのぐらいでね、困ったんですよ。だんだん慣れてきましたけどね。
Chief among Mr. Kiyoshi's concerns was the fact that the family business under his watch had regular buyers who trusted his judgment about tuna. The auctioneers also knew him well, as he was a familiar face at their offices. Mr. Kiyoshi was acutely aware that once he was out of the picture, they might not accord his young sons the same respect and consideration that were due to him.
マグロ屋っていうのはもう正直言いまして、そのお客さんが私なら私、人につくんですよね。人を頼って来てくれるんです。ですから私が病気しちゃったことでお客がガタ落ちになっちゃったわけですね。減っちゃったというんですか、それもあるし、それからまだ子どもたちが未熟と言われる点をお寿司屋さんなり相手さんねになんていうんですか、見られて点があったっていうのかな。ガタ落ちに急激に来ました。売り上げも、もう本当にショックなくらい落ち込んでました。
For a while, their sales dropped by more than 30%. Both brothers were shocked, but determined that they were not going to let the stalls sink. Neither were they going to let down their 9 employees who had been long-term staff.
やっぱりだから失敗もしてみて、ああこういうのなんだっていうのは日々ね分かって勉強していくのがね重要だと思います。
As Mr. Kiyoshi's health deteriorated, he could only attend the store once a month. Whatever energy he had, he spent it on praying for his sons at his late father's grave. He also knew, though, that there was something else he could do for them: apprenticeship. One of the old traditions at Tsukiji market is the system whereby apprentices learn from the masters on how to be a shokunin, or an artisan. If he could find one person who was willing to teach his son the finer arts of the business, he could rest in peace. Kashi Aoyagi was such a man. He was a sushi cook who was one of Mr. Kiyoshi's regular customers. He had continued to patronize the stall even after Kiyoshi fell ill.
この間みたいにちょっとつるっとしたんじゃないからね、
However, he was not about to give the brothers an easy time. He had not liked the tuna they gave him the last time.
いいんじゃない。
やっぱもうこの時期ないからも
まだ彼たちはまだまだこれからもうちょっと勉強しなきゃ入れないなっていう時期だったんですけれど、周りの皆さんでこうサポートしながら、私らなんかも古いから託されるわけなんですけれど、なんとかこのせがれたちを私らでちょっと鍛えていきたいななんて思いまして、頼まれたもんですから、いろんなことを言いながら、こちら使う側ですから結構厳しくやって現在来てるんですけど。
Yuki, the older brother, had to make up for the loss in business after his father retired. He was about to meet a chef for the first time to promote his tuna.
これがインドマグロのうちでも一番最高のバスとマグロインドなんですけど、新規ということでいろいろ勉強させて、この値段から勉強させていただいて、ぜひとも入れさせていただければと思うんですが、よろしくお願いします。
試しにじゃあ少しずつ試しにちょっと入れてみますんで。
ありがとうございます。
In the meantime, his brother was also getting some much-needed guidance from another stallholder, 43-year-old Yukitake Yamaguchi. Mr. Yamaguchi opened his intermediate wholesale shop at Tsukiji 22 years ago, when he was only in his 20s. Going by sales figures, his business is among the top ranked in the market and is patronized by many professional customers from the industry. Yamaguchi is a mentor for Masayoshi. They have become partners, helping each other in the bidding process, especially when the supply of wild tuna is low and the price is high. How it works is this: one of them bids for the tuna that they have both chosen together, and when they win the bid, they share it between them. Yamaguchi felt that he could help Masayoshi in keeping the family business alive.
お客さんによって好みが違うんでね、その辺のやっぱ難しさですかね。例えばここにあるように本店さんは長崎の息がいいで、大倉の久兵衛さんは定置のマグロの方がいいというふうに、やっぱ使う側が求めるものが違う。また食べる側も、大倉に行く人はやっぱりこういうマグロを食べに行く、本店に行く方はこういうマグロを食べに行くっていうね、それのやっぱ難しさですかね。ただいいマグロだから収めればいいっていうんじゃなくて、そこの店に合うマグロ。
It's no different to any other retail business in that you have to know what the customer wants. But in the tuna wholesale business, there's much more to it than that.
誰が見てもいいマグロを買うのは、誰でも買いますからね。そうじゃなくてちょっと危ないけどもよく出たらいいなっていう魚を 変えるっていうのはやっぱ経験ですかね。それがまだ若はね、もう少しなんじゃないかな。あ、どうも、どうも。ご無沙汰してます。そうですね。
社長がねいる間にいろいろなことにチャレンジしてやっていきたいっていうのはあるんですけど、やっぱりその中で早くまあ一人前社長がいなくてももう十分できるぐらいのに自分をね早く成長させたいなっていうのがあるんで、まあ2人でね兄弟でうまくそこら辺はうまく啓発し合っていけばいいんじゃないかなと思うんですけどね。
2 years after that program was made, the senior Takare passed away in February 2008. Fast forward to the present day, and the partnership between Masayoshi and Yamaguchi is still going strong. Competition and rivalry at the market, particularly on the auction floors, is still as intense as ever, perhaps even more so as the supply of wild or fresh tuna has dwindled. Under Yamaguchi's tutelage, Masayoshi has gained in confidence at the platform. In the last 2 years, he's made many major bids for wild tuna, which didn't turn out too badly.
まあそうですね。やっぱり時々ちょっとよぎるじゃないですけど、そういうことが、最初は正直どんな魚買っていいのか、あとはお客さんでもやっぱいろいろ好みがありますし、あとはどう売っていいのかね、値段の付け方とかも全然分かんなかったですから、あとはそういうのはもう周りの仲買さん、他のマグロ屋さんとかからもいろいろ教えていただいたり、あとはまあ今までいた周りのスタッフとかからもいろいろ教えてもらいましたけど、いやなかなかこればかりはまあもう何回も失敗もしましたし、そうですね。
The two men are eyeing a tuna that they hope to buy. Masayoshi remains apprehensive at this stage. He tries to recall what his late father taught him.
失敗っていうか、買う時の失敗っていうのもありますけど、それは自分のね目利きが足らないというか、いい魚だなと思って高く買っちゃって、で開けてみたらあんまり良くなかったとか、そういうのもありますし、やっぱり一番やっぱ失敗だなと思うのはやっぱりお客さんにちょっといいものを出さなきゃいけないのにちょっと商品が悪かったりしたとか、そういうことですかね。
Within minutes, Yamaguchi and Masayoshi get the tuna they bid for. With two of them assessing the quality of the tuna, it ought to be worth their bid. But at least if it turns out to be a dud, the risk is shared as well. For the intermediate wholesalers, the end game is not just a question of whether the tuna was worth the price they paid for it. It's all about getting the best possible quality tuna of the day for their customers. Part of the excitement of the business is the almost immediate results of the gamble made at the auction hall. If it's good, they can be assured that their customers will snap it up. Masayoshi gets to cut the fish, a skill that he has barely had time to learn in the last few years. So is the tuna that Masayoshi bought this morning as good as he thought? Learning how to bid and what price to pay is not the only thing in the business. Masayoshi has had to learn the difficult and demanding skill of cutting or carving up a tuna. This is black tuna, often called the black diamond of the sea. Cutting it up requires skill, at once bold and delicate.
あ、いいんじゃないですか。赤身も綺麗だし、脂も出てるんで、ここは脂のとこですよね。それできめの細かいのとか。いや、今の中では比較的いい方だと思いますよ。あとはね、おろしてみてね、どうかっていうのは分かりますけど、この時点でも大体まあいいだろうっていうのは分かりますよね。
Every apprentice who wants to learn how to cut up a tuna has first to learn the conversation of the tuna, maguro no kaiwa, a phrase coined by a master artisan at the market. This refers to the relationship between the cutter, the fish, and the knife. The cutter has to listen to the sounds as he is cutting the fish to know when and where to exert the exact amount of pressure so that the final cut is clean, without any uneven or jagged edges. It has to be done with a precision that takes years to master. There should also be a nice crunch just before the knife reaches the board. The body, the knife, and the tuna must be as one, so that the arm is in perfect sync with the tuna as the flesh is being cut. First, the head is cut off. The black tuna has a beautifully streamlined body. The knife is inserted in the middle. This is the knife used. Black tuna swims at high speed, more than 160 kilometers per hour, so its body is covered with hard skin and it has strong muscles. It's not easy to cut up. The next knife is like a samurai sword. It's much longer than the first one. It's 2.4 meters long and surprisingly flexible.
最後に大きいこの長いやつで下ろすときはもう2人の間合いみたいのがないといけないですね、やっぱり。
This knife is inserted in the cut made earlier, and then two people cut together, one holding the handle and the other the tip of the knife. The trick is to make use of the knife's flexibility and move it as close to the bone as possible. The knife has to be this long to cut the meter-long fish in one go. In just 7 minutes, the fish has been halved.
「あとはやっぱ赤身の身の質というか、まあ順々に覚えてって そんでできるようになったらやっていくみたいな感じですよ。はい。
やっぱりチームワークというかこう。
そうです。
This is the finishing knife. The knife is single-edged, so it can be held close to the cut surface of the fish. This makes a clean cut possible. Moving the knife to and fro will damage the surface and the sheen will be lost. The trick is to cut towards you in one go. If the tuna is not cut properly, it can lose its inherent freshness. Although the dealers are very careful in selecting the tuna they want, there's nothing they can do about damage or disease that can be found deep within the flesh of the tuna. If a fish has these kind of defects, they won't be visible to the naked eye and will only become apparent when the fish is cut open. Sometimes there is damage caused by poor chilling that can affect the quality of its flesh. So it's a huge relief to dealers and their staff when an expensive tuna is cut open and is revealed to their customers as perfect. Once it's fully confirmed that the tuna is the best of the morning, it sells like hotcakes, or rather like fresh chunks which cost a few $1,000s per piece. The reputation of the dealer, in this case Masayoshi and Yamaguchi, is on the line. One bad buy can be forgiven, but if there are repeated wrong calls made on the auction floor and buyers are not able to get what they want from them, the dealers will be hit very hard. The auction price Masayoshi and Yamaguchi paid for the tuna this morning will determine the price of tuna at the high-end restaurants for the day. It looks like this tuna sushi for lunch today is not going to be cheap. Despite having bought a good tuna, Masayoshi doesn't stop to examine it carefully after each cut. Many of us have probably never got close and personal to the flesh of a bluefin top-quality tuna. Well, this is what it looks like, almost like meat. Quite a piece of work by Mother Nature. See how smooth the surface is. This is the highest quality black tuna. And here's how it looks inside. This is the most fatty part. This is the next most fatty part. And this is the red flesh.
何を見てるって素直に何を見てる、まあ油のタッパと上がり方とか、あと赤身の質とかね、やっぱ切ればよく見えるんで分かるんで、なんともちょっと説明が難しいんですけどね、これは。まあ色の出具合っていうのももちろんあるんですけど、まあ見てれば分かるんですよね。
Ever since their father passed away, the brothers have been acutely aware that they're probably the youngest kids on the block. At the time the interviews were made, they'd only been completely on their own for 3 months. The pressure on them was to deliver the same standard of customer service, quality tuna and competitive pricing as their father had. And the fact that they're the 21st generation of Takaris carrying on a 400-year-old family business weighs heavily on them.
店を閉めるようなことは絶対ないようにしたいと思いますし、自分が今継いでちょっと21代目なんですけど、そのプレッシャーもかなり大きいですし、周りからやっぱ見る目もやっぱ違いますし、 どんどんどんどんやっぱ発展していかせなきゃいけないなと思ってます。はい、自分はまあ小さい頃から祖父にやっぱ継ぐんだっていうか言われてましたんで、ここに来るのは当たり前だと思ってましたし、まあすごい誇りには思ってましたけど、はい。
In comparison with the other vendors, the Takari brothers are on the reticent side, but they're quietly confident that they can take their family's business to the next level. The challenge is to find new ways of management that don't run too much against the traditional practices of the market.
やり始めた当時はもうやっぱすごいプレッシャーがあったんですけど、まあだんだんやっぱりもうまあ開き直っていけるようにはなってきたんで、ある程度やっぱり自分が継いだからにはやっぱもう自分のカラーで歴史もありますけども、そこが大事なのかなと思います。はい。まあ人のやり方をまあ最初は真似して勉強しつつやるんですけども、やっぱ最終的には自分のやり方でやっていかないとうまく商売というものはできないのかなと思いますけど。
The brothers don't elaborate on the kind of changes they hope to make, in part because they're still grappling with the system their father left behind. In the meantime, there is still much to learn. Cold tuna, for instance, has to be treated differently from fresh tuna. The tuna is frozen in the ship while it's still at sea. Today's highly advanced freezing technology means that it's of excellent quality and is used as an ingredient for sushi by supermarkets, retail shops, and at home. Whether it's fresh or frozen tuna, shellfish, clams, mussels, or conger eels, each comes with a special tool that enables the fishmonger to do his job. These tools are made by the Japanese, and here the knives and tools are almost all for the professionals at the Tsukiji markets. Better freezing technology has meant a lot of tuna coming in from fishing grounds overseas. To cut these frozen tuna efficiently, electric saws were introduced, but the backbones still remained. Let's take a look at two tools used to cut up tuna, the starfish of the Tsukiji market. First this, with handles on both the right and the left. Is it for two people? Before, it took two people to shave off the backbone with a hatchet. So this was invented so that one person could perform the task. You sandwich the tuna between your legs, put your weight on the knife, and shave off the backbone. Another improvement is the small bump on the back of the knife. When cutting off the tuna head, people often used to hurt themselves because their hand slipped. So one intermediate wholesaler had an idea. He thought that if there was a bump, the hand wouldn't slip. So he asked a knife maker to make one. On the surface, the idea was simple and practical, but it underscores the commitment the artisan always has towards his work. To say that the Tsukiji market is a microcosm of Japanese society is not an exaggeration. Whatever the task is, the foremost thought is to do it well and to find ways and means to facilitate the process. These little inventions are the details that define the culture of Tsukiji market, and that is best described as Japanese. The knife in Japanese cuisine is one of the most important tools of the trade. It's a well-known fact that any sushi chef worthy of the name would never use another chef's knife. Each blade and its shape, length and design is customized for specific purposes. A good chef knows which blade to use for each individual sushi. Likewise, at the Tsukiji market, every artisan is familiar with the range of knives at his disposal. This man has been selling knives for the last 80 years at his stall just outside the market. Almost all his customers are professionals. Each of these is a specially made knife. There are about 50 to 60 different types at his shop.
そうね、やっぱり皆さん数さばく人が多いんで、自分にこう合ったような形とか、そういう重さとか、厚さ、薄さとかそういうこだわってる人いますけど、まあそういう時は特別もう注文あつらいになっちゃうんですね。それでまあずっとあとはなんていうんですかね、うち形そのものを自分で研ぎながら形を作っていく。それでこう馴染んでいく。大体ほとんどそっちの方が多いですけどね。大体元この使ってる包丁なんですけど、元は大体このサイズだった。大体1年持たずにこういう風になっちゃう。
一応これ半分以下ですね。
そうです。
それだけ数を
さばいて、あとはどうしてもいろいろこう叩いたりして骨なんかだって欠けた場合どうしてもこういう風に小さくなる。
For an apprentice at the market, there are numerous tasks, often very menial and repetitive, that he has to complete before he is allowed to move on to using one of these knives to cut a tuna or kill a fish. To become a true artisan, an apprentice might spend years just sharpening knives before he could ever hope to cut up a tuna himself. Cutting up a tuna, though, is not the only skill that requires years of training. Each stall has its own speciality. There are stalls that deal with shellfish, like this one. This stall holder is prying open one of the more expensive arc shells. She has to do so without letting her tool touch the shellfish. Even the slightest damage will bring down their value and cause them to be rejected by the buyers from the sushi restaurants.
45年ぐらい。何個？1000個じゃ効かないかもしれない。朝3時ぐらいから見て始める。
Clams are the most difficult to open. They're tightly closed with strong adductor muscles, so great skill is needed in inserting the knife. The stubborn shell still refuses to be pried open, so she cuts off one adductor muscle. Nothing is left in the shell. Experience and skill has produced this gem with a pearl-like sheen. This is a shop that has been dealing in conger eel for 30 years. To supply tempura restaurants with ready-made pre-cooked tempura, Mr. Masaru Sawatome has to prepare 1,000 conger eels a day.
いや本当に全然使うことないそんなに不自由はしてないしそんなに見て仕事以外は使わないですもん。これタコができちゃうのねあんまり締めだこって言うんだけど包丁を持って穴子を締めるとどうしてもここらに一番力が入るんでここにタコができちゃうこういうふうに締めるとどうしてもここが当たっちゃう最初は切れて痛かったでもだんだん慣れちゃって、だんだんもうほら硬くなっちゃうんですよタコだからそれでもう全然痛くもなんともない。
The professionalism of the artisans extends to those who don't use any tools at all. just their bare hands. Take a look at Mr. Noriyuki Harai's hands. He deals in fresh shrimps. His job is to separate the shrimp instantly according to size, weight and texture. He works 6 hours a day with his hands in the water most of the time.
せがれなんて小さい時ね、風呂入る時入れるでしょ。水虫だって言ったらこんな膨れちゃうんだよ。びっくりする。自分の手じゃないんだよ。こういったもの、甲殻類です。これがありますよね。これをこういうぐーっと貝を巻いて、貝の蝶つがいをこれで上手にねつくんですよ。だいたい何千本何万本ってやってると、それがみんな当たっちゃって、これも刺さるしね。築地っていうところはね、こうパッと見るとね、その池でね、かっこいいように見えますけどもね、その皆さんがまだ寝てる頃からね、夏だろうが冬だろうがね、もう水っぱな垂らしてね、あるんですよ。お客さんにね、いい状態で届けようと言ってこう仕事してる手がこういう結果いろんな職業あるけどね、まあ結構厳しい職業ですけど楽しんでます。
His faithful hands have served him for 45 years. Work at any fish market is tough, but when you do it for more than 20 years, working until you have completely mastered the art of telling quality fish or seafood by touch, or the skill of prying shellfish open at amazing speed, that is really professionalism at the highest level. The concern for the Tsukiji market community is whether these skills can be passed on to the next generations. The prognosis is not good, because while their concern is genuine, they themselves don't wish their children to work at the market because it's so tough. The apprentices who come to the market are people like Ryoma. He's just 19 years old. When he was 17, he was sent by his father to work at Daizen under the tutelage of the Takare brothers. He's been working for them for a little over a year. Ryoma's father owns a little sushi snack bar at the train station, and he wants his teenage son to learn the fish business right from the beginning.
まあ楽しいですね。築地来てなんだろうな、まあいろんな人とかいるし、やっぱいろんな人います。なんか外人もいっぱい来るし、いろんな人見れるし、やっぱり勉強になっていいと思います。まあ朝起きるのだけですね。朝3時からなんで、それはちょっときついですね。
Ryoma is likely to return to his father's sushi shop to help run the business, so at least he might be a new customer for the Takare brothers in time to come. The Takare brothers are still single. Very soon, they'll have to think of their succession plans for the 400-year-old family business. But for now, the central task is to try to expand the business according to the wishes of their father and grandfather.
先代の時代はまだ4店舗だったんですけど、自分が入ってからいろいろお客さんも増えまして、で、魚も買う量も増えましたし、あと人も増えたんで、作業する場所もいっぱい必要になりましたんで、それであと、3店舗増やしまして、7店舗に拡大しました。7店舗の広さと、あとは築地の場内で商売できるというか、卸から仕入れできるその権利のある観察というのがありまして、これなんですけど、これがうちの観察なんですけど、これが7枚うちに買える権利を持って、7人かぶって、それで7人がバラバラに分かれて買えるようになる。
Their late father wanted to take the business overseas, but now this is something that will have to wait due to the downturn in the global economy.
景気も良くないですし、 魚もちょっと少なくなってきて、規制とかかかって少なくなってきまして、ガソリン代も高くなった状態なので、魚もどんどん値段が高騰している状態なので、だからもう今我慢して生き残って、将来につなげていい時期が来ればそこからどんどん発展していきたいなと思います。
In recent years, it has become harder to do business as profit margins have become lower. Some of the stallholders at the market are not keen to have their children work there due to its tough demands. Ultimately, in this billion-dollar industry, the future of Tsukiji market can only lie in the hands of people like the Takari brothers and all the artisans. Their passion and commitment to the job is what keeps the tradition and culture of Tsukiji market alive. Whether it'll be here for another 400 years is anybody's guess.